Hello and welcome to another video. Now, today we're going to make something that's called in Bahasa Indonesia Cakwe. Now Cakwe comes from words in Hokkien meaning fried bread. Sometimes it's called Chinese crullers. This is sort of a tasty dish made various parts of China, Taiwan, Indonesia, elsewhere in the southeast of Asia. And basically it was spread by the Chinese diaspora around pretty much all of Asia. These are crispy, long pieces of bread that are often cut thinly and served on congee or eaten as a snack. So we're going to go ahead and make some today. They're great. They're also fairly easy. So it just takes a little bit of patience. For the ingredients, it's fairly simple. I have 200 grams of flour. That's about 1 2/3 of a cup. But I'd recommend, in most cases of baking, doing everything via weight. I have an egg. I have 25 grams of milk. It's about 2½ tablespoons with about 2 tablespoons of oil on top. And then I have half a teaspoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon of baking powder, and a 1/4 teaspoon or so of salt. Finally, I have a little bit of water here, maybe 3 tablespoons. I have it in this container because I'm going to drizzle it in. Anyway, the next step is we're going to go ahead and make the dough. This is going to be nice and easy. And from there, then we've got to let it sit overnight and we'll be back tomorrow. So for preparation, we're going to start by taking our large mixing bowl and adding all of our dry ingredients and mixing them well. Now some recipes use yeast. This is not really necessary. The basic fluffiness of this sort of bread is caused by frying it so that the water expands into steam and pushes out the bread. So you could probably even make it without baking soda or baking powder, but I'm not going to bother trying that. So once I've mixed all that together, I have a well. I'm going to crack my egg into it. And add my milk and oil. And then I'm going to start to mix this all in together so that I have a batter. And as I stir in the dough, as I stir this in, I will get a dough. So from here, I'm going to start drizzling in some water and working that in. As I do that, gluten's going to form. And we will be on our way towards having a dough. Now, unlike like the cornbread or some other things, we really want this to be very well mixed. In part because we really want there to be nice gluten formation. Now I've used a bread flour for this, so because I like it a little more chewy. But if you don't like a bread flour, if it's too chewy with the bread flour, you can use an all-purpose flour, and I have a little too much water in this, so I'm going to add some flour back. So if you have something that's, in general, when you're working with doughs, if you add, if it gets too sticky, what I usually do is I just cover it in in flour, and then I basically knead it in and see what comes in and what works in, and when we get to the right consistency, we can just take it out. So I'm going to go ahead and knead this until we have a nice smooth dough, and I think this is going to be nice. And then I'll be back. So now we have a nice smooth dough. We're going to wrap it in plastic wrap and put it in the refrigerator overnight. Can even do it for a whole day. So I'm just going to take it out of here and then show it to you. Then we're just going to wrap it up. Now we have our dough. This will go in the refrigerator and we'll come back to it tomorrow. So now it's the next morning and I've had this in for almost 24 hours now. The gluten's formed and it will be fairly soft. I'll come back to this in a moment. While I'm waiting for, or while I'm getting this started, I'm going to go ahead and fill my wok with oil. I'm going to try to have it be 1 to 2 inches. For most people's fingers, 1 inch is about to the first joint and 2 inches is about to the second joint. So that gives you an idea of about how much oil you want to put in. These are deep fried, so definitely don't be stingy with the oil. So I've decided to do this on this board for reasons that will become clear in a little bit. First thing to do is to flour the board because we really don't want this to be super sticky. And then once this is done, just going to spread this flour out a bit. That may be a little more heavily floured than I would normally do, but that'll be fine. Then I'm going to take the dough here, and part of the issue here is the dough is still a little bit sticky, and that's fine. But I'm going to take this dough, I'm going to kind of form it into a rectangle, and I'm going to set it on here. Next I'm going to roll it out and cut it. So usually what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it out once one direction and then go the other direction. And although I've only put one what do you call it? Inch or so of oil. This will be fine. So now I have something that in this case is about 18 inches by about 8 or 9 inches. So I'm going to cut this into 14 strips this way. So I start by cutting it in half. And then I'll usually basically cut each side into 7. And here we have our strips. The next step is to pair them. So usually I'm going to pick up one and I'll flip it over because the bottom side is usually stickier. And I put the two bottom sides together. The reason is we want them to stick together just a little bit. And I'm just going to do that all the way across. And you'll see they stretch out a little bit as I do that. And then I'm going to take the dull side of a butter knife, or you can use chopsticks. And I'm just going to put a crease in the middle of each one. And this should help them to stick together a little bit during the frying. And we put a crease using the back side. And the second thing I'm going to do is, this one is a little bit bigger than the other, so I'm actually going to cut off the ends. I'm going to use the ends to test the heat of the oil. So the oil's not hot enough yet, but it will be soon, and then we'll start frying them. Now, if they're separating like this, what I usually do is I'll just fold them back a little bit like that, wet my fingers under water, wet both sides, push them back together, and then they'll stick. Do that on both sides, and then these should be fine. And then, yeah, I'll do the same on the others, and we'll go ahead and continue frying them. So what I do to test the oil is I take one of the little pieces of dough and I put it in. It's very important to get the oil hot enough, because otherwise it's not going to puff up properly. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it in here until it starts to turn golden brown. Then I'll take it out and I'll put another one in to test it, and then based on that I will probably add the others. Keep in mind the oil's hot. My favorite utensil for this is a spider, I think is called, which is one of these sort of slotted or mesh spoons. These are used a lot in Chinese frying, by the way. But I'll come back when the oil's hot and we will go from there. So now I'm satisfied the oil is hot enough, so I've turned it down from a 9 to a 7. Most recipes will say turn it to medium or heat it up on medium. The big thing is that the hotter the oil, the higher the heat is, the more heat you have available to transfer to these while they're frying. So I'm going to go ahead and just add one here, and you will see. Look at how that puffs up just right away. I'm going to add a second one. Now, one traditional way that these are sometimes made is by turning them constantly with like a cooking chopsticks. But I'm not going to do that. Usually what I do is I fry them on one side until they're golden brown and then turn them over. And that avoids them twisting in some regards. And if you use a slightly higher heat, like a 7 instead of a 5, you can cook 2, 3 at once without a problem. Look at those puff up. So these are frying nicely. I'm going to take this one out, and you can see how nicely it's stuck together. One difficulty of frying so many at once is they can bend a little bit and crowd the pan. So in this case, just do what you can to kind of manage. And question is this one done? Because that would make things much nicer. Yes, it is. And we're almost done here. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and I'll be back in a few moments. And you'll be able to see the plate. There's really not much I have to do to present it, and then we'll go ahead and do a taste test. So from here, it's just a matter of periodically flipping them over and making sure they are, and notice these two separated all the way, and so did these. That's probably because I floured the board a little too much, but that's okay. That's fine. This one's like this perfect, nice golden color. So I'm going to take it out. I suspect its tear is also. So here we have our Cakwe. I'm going to go ahead and taste one. Just this one. And look at the inside of that. These are fluffy. They're quite light. They're a bit oily from the frying, but I guess that means you don't need like something like butter on them. Still being warm, they are very soft, just a little salty. They're quite delicious. Again, normally they'd be eaten with something else, but I'm very happy with this recipe, and definitely will be making it again, especially when I do blueberry yam. So, hope you enjoyed this. Bon appetit, and see you next week.